All right, thank you guys for being here this morning. Obviously, looking back on Saturday, some good and some bad, but just pleased with getting a road win. It's always tough to go play on the road versus a tough Georgia State opponent, but we found a way. And I think really more than anything, the resolve in the second half, especially by the defense, to do what they did and really get the stops that were much needed and play a complete game. It's a four-quarter football game, but pleased with some of those things. Obviously, a lot to learn from the film, and excited to move forward in the right direction. Obviously, our focus now has completely moved to Troy. We know how capable they are. You look at the first half versus Clemson. Clemson was the 8th-ranked team in the country. They go to Clemson, and they're up 16-3 at half. They held them to 17 yards rushing in the first half, and you literally, if you just put it in black and white, you'd have no idea. You'd think Troy was the 8th-ranked team in the country watching the game. It was a butt whooping in the first half. Clemson made some adjustments, was able to find a way, but it's a tough Troy team. I mean, they're playing outstanding. They've done a fantastic job even towards the tail end of last season, really getting some adjustments right. And it's everybody I talk to, right? We got an early morning game. We're going to have to wake up and roll and be ready to play, but we got to get our ducks in a row and have great focus on the game plan ahead.
Ryan, week 2, the first chance where you got to see your players in some real in-game adversity. What did you find out about your players during those moments?
Yeah, Frank, you're exactly right. We knew it. We talked about the adversity on the opening kickoff for the first game, but really just what's it look like? How are their eyes and the communication on the sideline? That's the number one thing I look for, right? Where guys pointing the finger at each other, were they blaming coaches, were they blaming each other, or were they sitting there taking accountability, say, okay, yeah, I can get this fixed. These are things that we can handle. Coaches also making the proper adjustments. And what I appreciated about everybody was they were bright-eyed and ready to listen and find ways to adjust. Everybody said to a man, like, okay, what can we do to improve, and how are we going to get this fixed? And then you go into the locker room at halftime, obviously with a little bit of momentum from that long field goal, but the guys sat there and said, okay, whole new game, 0-0, how do we find ways to get this fixed? And I think more than anything, we were able to see the adjustments, not only schematically, but just from what we needed to do from a mental toughness aspect. And so that perseverance, like I just said, Frank, is everything. That's really what you want. You can hang your hat on and have the opportunity to win a lot of football games if your guys are mentally tough.
Coach, is there any one position or one player that really stands out for you from Troy that is going to keep you up this week?
Look, they got 2 wide receivers right now that are playing at an SEC level. You talk to Clemson and they said, listen, they're a lot better than you want them to be. And sometimes you have the opportunity to talk to opponents just to get a feel of what they thought about their personnel. And you just go back and watch them. I mean, they got a quarterback that started versus us that was injured a little bit last year, that gets the ball out quick. They're talented. They change personnel almost every play. So that, you'll sit there and sometimes you'll go out there with 3 tight ends. Next time it's 2 running backs and no tight ends. So we got to be ready for a variety of personnel. And then defensively, they continue to change their scheme. Like 1 minute they're 3 down, then the next minute they're 4 down, then they're playing a 3 high safety. So we've got to be really dialed in to figure all that out. But it's a very, very talented team. One of the things I noticed about them is they didn't lose a whole bunch of guys to transfer. And it's not one of those teams, you look at these with 70 new players like ourselves. They got a bunch of guys that are there and sticking there and playing at a really, really high level.
You talked about mental toughness, getting to play Georgia State. You're saying players have seen them get basically blasted by Ole Miss. Where's their mind? This time you think Troy got their attention. You don't have to worry about that as much for this team?
Well, Jarvis, one of the things I did was I just showed our team almost like the first 10 offense plays versus Ole Miss, where Ole Miss threw 2 picks versus Georgia State, right? And I reminded them that, Vanderbilt lost at Georgia State last year and then turned around and beat the number 1 team in the country in Alabama. So every week, it's a given deal. We talked about it last week, right? Army versus Tulsa State at Army, lost that game and turned back around and go on the road and beat one time a ranked Kansas State this year. So I think it's every week, it stands on its own merit. Every team in college football is so capable. That's just what we're seeing, right? With this portal, with the variety of different schemes. Every single week we're going to have to be at our absolute best. So I don't think there's any trying to get our guys' attention. I think it's okay, hey, a whole new focus. This is our Super Bowl. We got to go out there and play it to the best of our ability, give ourselves a chance. Another road test. We are seeing it's harder and harder to win on the road, and there's going to be challenges. And so we're excited about those, but our guys will be dialed in as ever. Excited, right? Today's their off day, but hopefully they're watching some film and then to get back after it tomorrow morning.
And
Yeah, Greg's going to be day to day. As you guys saw, he did travel to the game, and the point was to try to see if he could. You know, if he woke up Saturday morning and felt like he could go. As of it sits this morning, he'll still be a day to day, and we'll know more as the week progresses.
What about kind of we saw a couple guys go out on defense? Is anyone else kind of in danger of not being able to play?
Yeah, I mean, I think with a lot of those guys, some of them were out for a few series. Others were, hey, this guy now stepped in and is playing at a higher level. I think also what happened, Jonah, is we saw, like, yes, there's some schematic adjustments, but then we were able to get some stops on defense, and maybe it was because of different personnel in there. So that was all combined, and I think a lot of that's going to go hand in hand. And we'll continue to monitor those guys that are a little bit banged up to see if they give us the best opportunity in the game or with the guy that replaced them during that game last week, if that moving forward.
Along those lines, Coach. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, offensively, 20, I believe it was 20 pass plays with 40 run plays. Is that kind of where you'd like to be, or with that game flow?
Well, I think a lot of it is game flow, getting a feel for it. What are they going to give you? You know, and some of those, like we said, you know, in the past, they may have been RPOs, and if they're going to give us the ability to hand the football off, then we'll do it, right? A couple of those, obviously, were Brandon Lewis seeing what the coverage was, seeing that maybe a drop 8 and the opportunity to run the football. So I think, you know, statistically, you know, I don't know how many were truly called RPOs as compared to how many were actually drop back passes with the quarterback ran it. But I think you combine all those and you get a better feel for it. But I think every game is going to stand on its own, right? Like, hey, if a team's sitting there dropping 8, well, we better run the ball even on 3rd and 8, right? And then if a team is, you know, loading the box and giving us, then we're going to have to win the passing game. So I think every week stands on its own merits. But I thought last week and, you know, this past Saturday was a decent balance. Offensively, you never want to be too heavy one way or the other. Obviously, winning football games is all that matters. But I thought it was relatively balanced.
Coach, you and Coach Hankins have talked about the depth of the defense, but in particular the defensive line. And you just alluded to the fact that maybe the personnel, because of injuries, maybe that was the difference. But in the second half, you got to the quarterback, you sacked him 4 times. You were very much more effective than you were in the first half. Was that maybe because you have that depth and were able to rotate guys, I don't know how many you played, and wore down their offensive line? Or was it just the adjustments you made at halftime on their scheme to be able to get
Yeah, Greg, great question. I think it's a combination of both. I really do, right? I think as the game goes on, we hope that depth, especially in the trenches, allows us to be able to take over a game, right? Like that's, and you see that a lot of times in college football. Like, wow, how was that team hanging with that team through halftime? And then the depth of a team, right? You know, it's almost like body blows in a boxing match, right? Like, hey, we're just going to keep, you know, it's sometimes people say, well, it's only a 5-yard run. Well, cool. You keep getting those 3, 4, 5-yard runs, you know, banging on guys on the double team. No different as a defensive line, right? Like, you hope that, you know, getting off the ball and running some different things, it affects their offensive line. I think we're able to get cut loose a little bit more. And then you also look at, you know, maybe we played the coverage a little bit better on the seam routes, right? Like, first half, you could have gone out there and run a seam route against us and probably scored, you know. But with no disrespect for your amazing athleticism, but we, you know, but clearly, so that was a schematic adjustment plus some of the personnel that we said, hey, this guy's going to put us in a better situation to go do this. So a lot of times we know sacks or coverage sacks, and then other times the defensive line or the pressure was able to get to them quite well.
Ryan, in a nutshell, after the first 2 weeks, what are you seeing from the team that you like, and then what are you seeing from the team that you want to be fixed?
Yeah, I think, you know, go back to your earlier question, Frank. I think so much of that is just the mindset and the approach to these guys, right? I think there's this immense focus that is needed week in and week out in college football, right? I think we've talked about this over the years, like, hey, sometimes, oh yeah, this is our long-term goal, but nowadays, man, for 18 to 23-year-olds, I think just that narrow focus, okay, the task at hand, right? This week, what do we got focused on? Troy. Last week, Georgia State, and that was all that mattered and nothing else. But then that focus within the game and the understanding of what it takes to accomplish that and be able to handle adversity. I think I told you guys going into, you know, training camp, like the 2 things I challenged our team was I want to see how they would handle adversity and some of the mental toughness and then some leadership. And I think we're showing some of those things are starting to show themselves on game day, right? It's always hard on a Wednesday practice to see what it looks like. So you know, those are the things I'm starting to be pleased with. And then, you know, some of the disappointing things is we've got to continue to be able to tackle clean throughout the entire deal. I think as the season goes on, that's something you hope. But, you know, the first half of the game, Frank, we had too many missed tackles, and a lot of it was poor angles and then also stopping our feet way before contact. So if you're the receiver and I'm the defender and I'm breaking down from here, I got no chance to ever make the tackle on you. I don't care how talented either one of us are. I've got to close that space. I got to make cleaner tackles. So I think that's one of the things we really have to improve upon. And then offensively, right, the offensive line I didn't think played as well as they're capable of this past game. And I think we showed some flashes of certain things, but we got to get them to continue to communicate a little bit better and find ways to put together a complete game plan.
One more question about the horn. That was the most annoying thing of all time. Is that something that you mentioned to the officials, or is that something they just decided not to allow anymore?
Well, I keep my grievances relatively private because I know how that works with the media. Now, it's no different, right? Like you go to Starkville and those cowbells, man. I mean, geez, like they're supposed to be not rang during the time of play, but that's the nature of it. Anytime the center addresses the ball. But I don't know if you guys notice, our center literally addresses the ball before anybody even gets lined up. Like the ball is placed, and Kari does a phenomenal job. I don't know how he's like a baseball catcher. He's down there, so technically all that stuff should be not allowed. But yes, that horn was very loud. There's a couple times I don't know, that and the drone that was creeping on my shoulder. What was going on during the game. But that's the nature of it. I did have a talk with the ref. I was like, that horn seems a little loud and inconvenient at times, and he said, yeah, I agree. So we had the same issue, right? Florida State, where their marching band was playing, and we couldn't even hear the clap at some point. So those are all part of it. Part of being on the road. Hopefully we don't have to deal with those issues back at home.
With the depth, you talked about it all offseason and in the first couple of weeks. Is there a point in the season where you'd like to narrow it down, particularly like a receiver, some of these positions, or are you happy to play that?
Yeah, Jonah, I think that's part of it, is trying to figure out what guys are capable of certain things. And I think we've talked about it all along. Like, I think it's guys, we're going to be even going in October like, oh, man, I know you had mentioned that guy, Ryan, in August 7th, when you talked to us. And now we're getting to see that show up. So I think part of that is it's a good thing, right? It keeps the guys fresh. And maybe in the fourth quarter allows you to be able to win some of those one-on-ones. Maybe guys a little bit more worn down. But like I said, even at that wide receiver position, I can't sit here today and say, man, this guy is head and shoulders above all else. Like we're seeing Cortez starting to make a little bit of plays that, a couple of weeks ago we weren't sure what he was really capable of. And so I think, maybe you'll see some guys maybe pull away. I think Jamari Hawkins is really doing some nice things. So maybe does that allow him to get a few more reps than the other guys? We're still going to have a rotation because I think that's a good thing. You don't want to go in the day and age of like where Rock Taylor and guys like Calvin Austin were getting 80 plays a game. Now you say, well, those are your number ones, and those guys got to. But was it the most efficient for themselves and for the team as a whole?
The explosive plays the defense gave up in the first half, was that more of a schematic or preparation issue, or was it just purely execution?
Yeah, no, I will always put it on us as a coaching staff, right? And then go back and figure out what can we do better to put our guys in the right positions. Because if it doesn't show up, then it's our job as coaches, regardless whether a guy, runs a 4-3-5 and our guy runs a 4-5-5. It's still our job to teach them and show them the proper techniques. But I think it was a combination of, right, hey, we got to be able to build better. We talked about the missed tackles and the explosive, but the explosive pass games, we weren't where we need to be exactly in a timely fashion. And I think part of that was showing our guys at halftime, and even with the iPads as the second quarter wore on, hey, this is where we got to get. Here's how they're trying to attack us, and finding a way. So I think it's a great combination of the coaching staff, the assistants, always give them the full credit of saying, hey, here's what we need to adjust, and the players saying, okay, yeah, this is what we can do to handle that a little bit better.
And with the receivers, at some point, do you feel like you need or you want a guy that's like, this is our go-to guy in the front? I mean, I know it's going to be lead by committee, but do you want somebody to kind of separate themselves as being the guy?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if that's something that you sit there and say you have to have right now. I can't sit here today on this Monday morning and say, yeah, it's great to have that go-to guy. Because I think what happens if you can line up, and most of the time we're in 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers out there, let the defense try to figure it out. Because as soon as they know, hey, this is the go-to guy, they start rolling coverage down there. They start getting doubled. And then all of a sudden, when your go-to guy, his production goes way down, and your quarterback's sitting there saying, well, wait a second, there's my dude. Now I've got to rely on these other guys. So I think having a variety of guys that we can rely on is huge. But we also, as the season goes on with so many of these new faces, we're still trying to figure that out. And I think, time will tell us that a guy that's going to make a clutch catch in a game there where it's much needed, and we say, okay, now how's he getting? And again, as the quarterback gets in rhythm with some of these guys, I think that's a huge thing.
What are the challenges, the specific challenges that when your team plays an early game on the road in this circumstance, a long bus ride, what's the challenge that faces this team as opposed to last week when you had a night game?
Yeah, night game. You're still recovering from getting home late, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was rough.
yeah, exactly right. But we're back here grinding, getting ready for Troy. I do think that is something to be said. One, we're a morning practice team, so there's never any excuses or explanations. We got to get ready to roll. And I actually mentioned that to the team yesterday, right? Like guys, hey, listen, we're staying about an hour and 5 minutes away. Not a ton of hotel options for us. And we understand it's going to be a great environment going to Troy and playing them. But, yeah, that's part of it. We're waking up at, I think, 5:15 that morning. A pregame meal, meetings, we're hitting the bus and going. So I think it's that fine balance, right? Like at the pregame meal, I don't want to be headbutting guys and saying, all right, let's go. And then, we're still 6 hours away from kickoff. But the same set, okay, get my mind right. Okay, here we go. We got to get our ready. It's a little bit different than sitting around the hotel all day, extra meeting times, walkthroughs. This is, hey, cool, let's brush our teeth. Let's go eat breakfast. Let's go 10 minutes of meetings, and let's get on that bus. And so I think really you want to build it up, right? Get on those buses with the guys having the right mindset and approach. Maybe they're going to close their eyes for a few minutes on that bus ride. And then when we get to the stadium, when we get to our locker room, okay, hey, let's dial it in. It's almost like your favorite radio song, right? Okay. You're listening to it, and then as it gets to your favorite part and the beat starts, let's turn that sucker up a little bit, and then right at kickoff, let's jam that thing all the way through. So it's that fine balance. There's a big difference. I think there's a lot of psychological things, right? Why do teams fly out west a couple days early when they're playing a different thing, right? Why do certain aspects of it? And so, yeah, you're exactly right. Playing a night game where you're sitting around the hotel all day, trying to keep your guys loose. We bought them up. A lot of guys went back and took naps. Well, this one is, let's wake, let's be bright and bushy tail, and let's go get this thing.
What's your
So
favorite
that learning
pregame
curve
song?
for Brendan Lewis on the safety, do you got, well, first of all, he's got to have a feeling when that pressure's coming and the clock in his head's got to go out. What do you tell them about that when they're in the
Yeah, it's a combination. I think to the blind eye, everybody'd say, well, the left tackle got beat. First and foremost, the quarterback's got to anticipate, right? We don't have that kind of time. The dig was coming open. He needs to anticipate that and let the ball go. We also, the left tackle got chipped by the running back. The running back actually ran into the back of the left tackle, and that's something we can't have. We can't have our running backs. They really need to do their best to keep their hands off the offensive line, especially in pass setting in our own end zone, because it could be detrimental, and that was a critical error. So, that safety ultimately, you're always going to, the easy thing to say, put that on the O-line, which I'm always one to blame them first and foremost. But I think ultimately that's on the quarterback and the running back.
You think about rolling out in those situations when you're back up, inside your own 5?
Not to give away our game plan, but yes, sir. Yeah, that's certainly part of our backed up thought sometimes. But then teams will sometimes add a safety, and you just got to figure out those windows. So.
What's your favorite pregame song to listen to?
Yeah, I'm anybody that knows me, like I've got a variety of music I listen to. I'll go and I'm not, I let the players blare what they listen to. I'm not one of those. You never see me with headphones on in the locker room, or much less even on the bus or the Tiger Walk. But I'll go anywhere from AC/DC to some Notorious B.I.G. I get my mind right, and then whatever the kids are playing, I start to get some of the lyrics, and if it's got a good beat, I'll bow my head and get with it. But no, I always tell our guys this: like, if we need music to motivate us, shame on us. In fact, last Wednesday at practice, because I said I'm not sure what the environment's going to be like. Normally we're playing music all the time for stretch, I want the energy. I want our guys bounce around. I said it's no music Wednesday, so we're out there stretching. It's silence, and because I want our guys to be motivated and have the discipline, understanding it doesn't matter what the environment looks like. Can we go out there and do that ourselves?
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.